What's going on, everybody? Hope you're doing fantastic. It's been a minute. I'm sorry. Shop's been crazy. But I appreciate all the love and support across the channel. Seriously, if you like this type of content, tools, shop-related conversations, all of that stuff, please like and subscribe, comment, all that stuff. You know, the normal stuff you hear in everybody's YouTube videos. It really does help. And I appreciate, seriously, all the love and support. So, as the title suggests, we're talking about diagnostic testing today. Something we've had a pretty hard time in our industry explaining and selling. I don't even like using the word selling because it's part of a service that we're offering. But what happens is the way we portray it, the way we communicate it to the customer does not help. Including myself in the past when I first started my shop, I really had a hard time with this. A lot of people think that because they can go get their check engine light scanned at a parts store or something, and those parts stores will recommend a bunch of parts, and we all know most of the time it doesn't fix it. They think that that's all we do is we just hook up a scan tool and read some codes and that's it. And so this is an area, like I said, that I struggled with, and I found that a lot of shops struggle with as well. That's why you see a lot of shops will say they include the diagnostic testing charge in the repair if they get the work done there. But a lot of those shops, in my experience, most of those shops don't actually include it for free. They just add it into the labor time. So they're still charging for it. It's just easier for them to sell it that way. I'm not a big fan of that process. I don't like the smoke and mirrors game. And honestly, the diagnostic testing fee is a great qualifier for customers, to me, in my opinion. What I have found is if they're not willing to pay the diagnostic testing fee, then that means they're more than likely not willing to pay for the repair, and they're going to waste my time anyways. So for me, I'm charging for my time. A lot of this equipment costs a lot of money, as all of you know. Subscriptions, scan tools, all the testing equipment, all of that stuff, tools in general, running a shop is very expensive. And one issue we've had, Scanner Danner's been talking about this a lot, is it pays more to do the low-hanging fruit stuff. And that's a problem. It shouldn't be that way. And as cars advance and progress in the industry and technology, diagnostic testing is becoming more and more relevant every day. So I'm going to run you through a scenario of a vehicle that I had here in the shop, kind of run you through my process and what I do now, and then as well as how I've adjusted and changed my process of the way I communicate with the customer. And I apologize because I don't edit. Sometimes I get on little bunny trails, so I'm going to try to stay on topic here. First, I'll start with how I communicate with the customer when they call. So let's say I have a customer, they say, hey, Chris, I'm going to use that vehicle. I have a 2004 Honda Civic, and my check engine light's on. I'd like to get that looked at. Okay, sounds great, absolutely. Well, in a lot of cases, what we do is we'll say, it'd be $150 to look at your vehicle. And that's it. And we just go over there. Well, you're not providing any value. You're not explaining or telling them what you're exactly doing. You're not just looking at their vehicle. We all know that. They don't know that. They think that a lot of times we can just hook the scan tool up and read codes, or we're just going to look at it and tell them what's wrong with it. And sometimes, obviously not a check engine light, but sometimes visually we can find out what's wrong with the vehicle, and that's a whole different scenario. But in this case with the check engine light, we're going to do some diagnostic testing. Let's start there. That's where a lot of this stems from. I shouldn't say all of it, but a lot of it stems from. We don't describe it or quote it well. We're basically saying, well, a diagnosis costs whatever. We're doing diagnostic testing. We're doing testing every time that we're diagnosing a vehicle, whether that's a compression test, a leak down test, coolant pressure test. We're pulling out the lab scope. We're using test light. We're load testing the circuit. We're using bidirectional controls on the scan tool to verify circuit operation. Whatever we're doing some sort of testing. So that is how I would encourage you to change your processes right from the start. It's no longer just diagnosis. We're not just looking at the vehicle. We're not just going to pull codes. We are going to perform diagnostic tests. So when a customer calls me and they say that, I'll say, well, not a problem. Absolutely. I'm happy to get that check engine light fixed for you and figure out what's going on. Our diagnostic testing fee is $150 for the first hour. We will do a series of tests to confirm and accurately diagnose your vehicle. Depending on the concern, there's a variety of tests that we can do. Most of those tests are included into that, but if there are any additional tests that we need to perform, I will call you ahead of time and let you know what tests we need to do, where we're at in the diagnostic testing process, and get your authorization. We will not spend any of your money without your authorization prior to performing those tests. And that's how I'll start the conversation. Depending on the problem, depending on if they've had it at other shops, that conversation does change. In a lot of shops, you can do things like what do they call that? Basically a stage one, or a level 1, level 2, and level 3 diagnostic testing fee, where your charge that you're charging goes up and is more expensive. Like if they've had it at 4 or 5 other shops and they can't figure out what's wrong with it and they've launched the parts cannon at it, well, you're not going to just charge your normal diagnostic testing fee for something like that. You should be charging more. And something that I like that Scanner Danner talked about and started doing is getting a retainer, a $500 retainer up front. And you may not use all that $500 retainer, and that's what you explain to the customers. You say, we're going to need a $500 retainer. Unfortunately, what happens is a lot of these other shops charge you for a lot of things that you didn't need. We are going to accurately test and find out what's wrong with the vehicle. We're going to tell you 100% what's wrong with it, and we don't want to have to call you every hour to get more authorization. There's a very high likelihood that we're not going to use that full $500, but we also don't want to keep bugging you and calling you during the entire process. So that's another way you can do it. Obviously, you're going to be able to pick and choose from these processes the way you want. I don't get into a lot of super heavy diags, so I don't run into that issue very often now. Now, if I do have something that's going to be a little more involved and they have taken it to other shops, I will let people know I want 2 hours up front. So I'll let them know, I'm going to need 2 hours of diagnostic testing time up front. I may or may not need that entire time, but it's usually, if it's been to other places, it's a little bit more involved. And so I don't want to have to call you multiple times for authorization. Same thing, kind of same idea. Now, another thing is the diagnostic testing fees. There's a lot of things that we do that we don't charge for that we should not be giving away for free. Because once again, that time and knowledge and tools is it all costs us money. It costs your technician time. You're paying them to perform that, and they should be paid. This is an issue we've had in our industry, and I'm not going to get on a rant about that, but they need to be paid properly, and so we have to charge properly for that. So, okay, let's go into this vehicle that I had. I had an 04 Honda Civic. I'm going to walk you through my diagnostic process, and this is what we got to do on our side in documentation and proving and showing what we did and why we charged for it. This now brings value to what we've charged for and why. Customer brought in their 04 Civic. His concern was low power, and he had some check engine lights on, but he said they had been on for a while, and the low power concern just started recently. Okay, no problem. So I went through my whole diagnostic testing conversation, explained everything to him. He said, cool, sounds great. So tester of the vehicle, confirmed the complaint, had my scan tool hooked up, watching live data. At this point in time, I kind of felt like it was a clogged catalytic converter, but I wasn't 100% sure. O2 data didn't show 100% that's what it was, and I wasn't 100% convinced, but it just felt like that. So no problem, no big deal. I made a back pressure tester or hooked up my back pressure tester. While I was doing the back pressure test, I had my phone out and I was recording with my phone showing the back pressure test. Snap throttle, it went way above 15 PSI, clogged catalytic converter. Great. I've got a video now of that back pressure test showing them, proving that they have some sort of issue going on. Next, I pulled out my bore scope and I put my bore scope inside the catalytic converter. Now, my bore scope, every bore scope doesn't do this, but you can record with your phone. It doesn't really matter. I encourage you to record the process. My particular bore scope records, and I can edit and type text on the video or picture. So I recorded a video. It has a microphone, so I can record talk and record what I'm saying and what I'm looking at to explain to them what I'm seeing while I'm recording. So I put the bore scope in there, showed them you could see all of the honeycomb pieces broken up, showed them record that, and I sent them both tests and said, hey, just wanted to let you know I got the diagnostic testing done. I confirmed you need a catalytic converter. Here are the tests that I did. I did a back pressure test, and then here's a bore scope to show you visually what's going on and what needs replaced, and such and such. Not only did I do those two things, but on the repair order for the diagnostic testing fee that I'm charging them, I documented everything that I did, all of my findings and everything, so that way it's there to cover myself, but also, again, to provide them value for what you're charging for. And that's a big problem of what we do in our industry. We don't document and show and explain and give them the value and describe the value of what we're offering. That's the biggest issue I've found in our description of diagnostic testing, along with not describing it correctly and just saying things like, we're gonna look over your vehicle. I'm highly guilty of this when I first started my shop. This is exactly how I described it. Oh yeah, I can pull codes for you, no big deal. That's not what we're doing. We all know that. And we all know, and everybody probably watching this video has been burnt in the past by guessing and just shooting the parts cannon at a vehicle because we just assumed it was a pattern failure or something of that nature. And that's why testing is so important. So let's talk about one process. I'm not going to go too much further in this. I'll probably do a separate video describing a lot of this. But one argument that I get from a lot of people is, oh, what if the customer already, quote unquote, knows what it is? Let's say they have a bad starter, or they think they have a bad starter. Hey, I went out to start my car wouldn't start, battery tested fine, took the battery to the parts store. They said the battery's fine, probably needs a starter. I know it needs a starter. Well, Mr. Customer, the diagnostic testing fee is $150. I have to do a series of tests to confirm. I have to verify that I'm getting power, that the ground is good, that the engine ground is good, I'm getting signal, all of the normal stuff that you're going to do for that test. They say, well, I don't need all of that. I know it's a starter. Well, I understand what you're saying, completely understand. And there's a very high possibility that it is a starter, but there's also a possibility that it's not. And I'm going to be quite honest with you. I know that you don't want to pay for that testing fee because you're convinced it's a starter, but you're going to be way, way more upset if I install a $700 to $1,000 starter on your vehicle and that's not what it needed because I didn't do my job as the professional and verify that's what it needed. And that's the short and sweet answer you provide with that. If they're not interested in that and they want to go somewhere else, let them go somewhere else. Because again, if that scenario does happen and it's not the starter and you do put that in, I promise you, they're going to be way more ticked that you put a starter in. And it's not your fault. It is not your fault. It's just what we're up against, which is why I make sure that I charge for a testing fee every time. And so we've got to do a better job. And like I said, I'm still improving and adjusting my process every day. I'm far from perfect at it. There are way better people out there. Seems mobile diag guys have this down because obviously that's what they're doing. So they're great people to ask, especially if they're successful. Obviously, you want to make sure the information you're getting is good information. So, take what you can from this video, use it for yourself, watch some other videos, take and pick and choose what you think will work best for you. But I'm telling you, if you put these processes in place, it helps you so much. I highly recommend, too, taking some service advisor classes. I have found a lot of mechanics turn shop owners and never leave their mechanic mindset and position and experience and never turn into business owner. And when you go from mechanic to business owner, you're hardly ever in the bay working on a car. You're spending most of your time on the computer or with customers. So you've got to get better at dealing with people and describing things and explaining things and having those relationships and creating those customer experiences. So hopefully this video helped you guys. Hopefully it gave you some great examples. Let me know in the comments your thoughts, what your diagnostic process is. And all of that. I'm always interested to hear how y'all are running because like I said, I like to take bits and pieces too and use them for myself of what I think will work for me and what won't. So appreciate you guys. Catch you on the next one. See you. Thanks.